Hello, everybody. Scott Stevens here as we wind up not quite the first full week of October, but the beginnings as we approach this first Friday of this new month. And we do so with the arrival of some chilly air. Widespread frost this morning from Iowa northward into Minnesota and Wisconsin, where we saw some light snow, as well as in lower and also upper Michigan, getting some light snow. Much colder conditions continued farther northward as you roll through Ontario and Quebec, and it's likely to stay cool for a few days yet. Meanwhile, out west, more comfortable conditions allowing for some progress as far as fires are concerned. And indeed, for the first time in nearly 2 months, the national preparedness for fires has been reduced from the maximum of 5 back to 4. So that is honestly the good news, is that we're seeing some preparation in that regard. So as we start with this, we will look at some of that snow as it did fall in Ashland, Wisconsin, and it just again, the ground is rather warm, so what we see melted, and that would be expected, as we've seen a couple previous relatively mild days, and there's still a lot of heat in the ground. But also, the tree colors are in full. They're probably at peak color. You add some little winds, and you take the reds and the yellows, the mature leaves, the ones that have done their full transition in color. Those would be stripped away with some strong winds, and that will likely be the case as the stronger north wind comes along. This kind of a scary bridge as it falls in far southeastern France, as they've seen some rather potent rains there lately. And of course, when you run the electrical conduits underneath the bridges, if the bridge fails, then so goes the electricity, and the water just keeps coming. And as we see water coming down mountainous terrain, it tends to pick up larger boulders and debris, and then it begins to scrub away at the older riverbed, and then creating a whole new channel. And if these kinds of bridges remain in the way, they are at risk of being scoured out of the river basin, as the Chinese and so many others have learned as the years have gone on. And again, running electricity under this is the smart thing to do until you have a failure, and then it becomes a problem, especially for those that we just turn it off. This I saw just because, I've always liked the strange things in the sky, and every time I go, I head outside, I'm looking for these. Well, not necessarily this, but what does not belong. And so we'll just let this roll out. Good afternoon, Jane. Nice day in the valley. Look at these lights turn on, and then whatever is there, just up, in, close the door, and then it's gone. So there are so many things that we are not aware of, that the powers that be are completely and keenly aware of, and it has been a long held secret to keep some of those things, in fact, many of those things, from the regular humanoids running around on this planet. NASA releases a picture of supernova in the NGC, or New General Catalog, Galaxy 2525, 70 million light years away. The supernova was about 5 billion times brighter than our particular sun. And I'll figure out. Yeah. Kind of cool to see that nova. We were all a little concerned about Betelgeuse, the red star in the constellation Orion, as it was dimming last fall and through last winter. Maybe that would have been a prelude to the star kind of collapsing and then going nova like this particular one. But it seems to have been, and indications are that it was just a dust cloud rotating or obscuring, eclipsing Betelgeuse. And then as that dust cloud moved away, we began to see that its brightness return. All right, if you've been watching for a couple of days, we've been concerned about the West and getting some of these early season rains on the ground in California. That would be very beneficial for the fires, for residents, for everybody, as an indication of the sky-high uncertainty for this next week, and as a major reminder as to why folks should not hang their collective hat on a major rain event. The midday 12Z EC, the European model run, was completely dry for 10 plus days in most of California. The previous run had depicted a major storm, and that's kind of unfortunate. And as we look at California, we can't overstate enough how much we appreciate the hard work that the firefighters have done as the fires, in this particular one being the glass fire, goes on. Another place to see a little bit of snow was Ironwood in Michigan, enough to coat things up. And then yesterday, that was the snow up in Labrador and in the Canadian Maritimes. And as we go to the National Interagency Fire Center based in Boise, they have now dropped the preparedness level to 4. No new fires as of this day. One additional fire was contained, and that brings us down to 68 active large fires, with 14 of them in Idaho, 19 in California, 3 in Washington, 2 in Wyoming. One of the big ones has been in Wyoming, the Mullen Fire, where the day before yesterday, because of the very strong winds, and they're dealing with incredible winds yet again today, had burned in a single day upwards of 23,000 acres. And we are at nearly 7.7 million acres having burned. I honestly don't think that number has been really updated since yesterday, because that seems very, very similar to the numbers. Yeah, it says 9 or 10 too, but we'll see. And this is the place, where the drought is going on. We show this to you frequently. The places that have seen some relief, though, continue to be New England, where they had another round of showers roll over there last night, much to their delight. And even as we look, the longer range models, the 12Z, let's see if we can update this to bring in the latest model run and what it would probably not, because we're not out to the end of it yet. But we're seeing the longer range one, the midday one, bringing in a little precipitation for the California Sierra, also through Nevada or Nebraska, which would be above normal precip. If you're not above normal, then you're in the browns and reds. If you're above normal, we're in greens and blues as far as that precip. So that's the upside. Heat still in place out west, where 7 plus. Definitely on the plus side of things, record highs are anticipated today, or at least within a degree of breaking those. Some cool locations still, northern Wisconsin, and that's going to be the case down in Florida as this cool air continues to sink off to the south, kind of driven by just this sogging, this big ridge of high pressure that's anchored over mid-Canada. Doesn't look like we've had any updates on this particular site. And extremes, as of yesterday, we were still running about 113 at Palm Springs and thermal, whereas west of Grand Lake, Colorado, at 16 degrees. So that's up 2 degrees from the previous days. And now we have investigative area 25 showing up north of Honduras, just east of Belize. And the models are they've played with this area of disturbed weather for several days now. It still develops it into a hurricane. We'll see what happens to 25, and then this other area still chance of formation out over 5 days remains on the low side. And this is why we're beginning to see some clouds through the western states. Another ripple in the jet stream diving out of Canada, going to reinforce this cool trough of low pressure that is sagging farther south towards the Gulf Coast. And then some rains. We saw some rains today moving across Maine. We don't really see it all that well in the water vapor imagery, but the visible imagery easily showing that kind of calm ahead right in through here, where we're getting that nice lift. Not big totals, and in fact, we could look at those totals right there: 3,700s, 6,900s, 5,900s, something between a trace along the coastal areas to just shy or close to an inch as we get north towards Caribou, Presque Isle, and then lighter totals between largely 2/10 and 6/10 as we move towards the middle part of the Middle Atlantic. And then as that thrust of cold air drives south, a lot of trails evident on the satellite imagery this morning. And then the big fire right here in Wyoming, that's it right there, just now beginning to break into the Colorado. So it is straddling the state line of Colorado and into Wyoming. All right, morning temperatures. This was 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Mountain Time. And look at all those that were at or cooler than 40 degrees. Those show up in the blues. And then we begin to see some of the 20s a little farther north. I'll reset this to the current time. Look at how the recovery was in the afternoon. Just still 30s up in the Arrowhead of Minnesota, but it does warm slightly. It's decidedly October. The season has changed. Obviously, when you've got snow and the colors of the trees are there, then obviously the season has changed. But I wanted to look at some of these lows across Iowa today, with Omaha at 31, Council Bluffs also in the upper 20s. So lots of widespread 20s, even middle 20s, 27, 31, 37 as we get a little farther west out into the plains of Nebraska, some 20s and lower 30s. And then, yeah, just kind of a very crisp start to the day. Refresh this and bring this current. The cool front is pressed all the way through mid-Florida and off the coast of all of those Gulf coastal states, now enjoying some very low humidities, maybe a little bit of return flow, Brownsville and the lower Rio Grande Valley, but otherwise, fall is in charge. The big thrust of the summer humidity and heat, that's been dealt with for the time. but it's been dealt with. Even if we were to get the humidity back, obviously, because the sun is south of the equator and headed south rather quickly, it's just not going to be kind of a concern. Here are the other showers across the Dakotas slipping south. Tried to go convective for a little bit. Interesting patterns that are showing up in there. Look at these like little chevrons right into boom, 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 boom. So something, it looks like it's driving against the flow of the movement, and that's why I was looking at this. There is just some kind of tech going on in here that was in my eyes, kind of keeping these thunder showers from being as big as they could have. Anytime you introduce a conflicting or destructive wave pattern inside of a cloud or a storm, you're going to see it weaken. It just begins to fall apart. And then there's the rain showers across Maine. Not big, but there's definitely some action going on there. And as we end the week, we've been watching this big ridge out west. It just arcs all the way along the west coast and then up into the Arctic, just north of Alaska. It breaks down fairly quickly as the weight of this Pacific jet stream just kind of bears down on it. And by the end of 10 days, 12 days, it's taken a beating. And it looks like the first nice thrust of Pacific air will come ashore 10, 11, 12, 13 October, and then maybe reposition itself for another blast, largely focused on central and more likely California, far northern California, and then the regions around Oregon and Washington. Those will be the folks. And then here's this little area, this little tropical baby down here. That's not even the one we were looking at off Belize. Now, that guy is right here at the bottom of the screen over the Yucatan. And it may or may not hold together in the Bay of Campeche, but another event tries to spin up and then is just slowly drifted ashore into the Florida Panhandle. But more interestingly is the rains approaching the Pacific Northwest. Let's come over here. We're going to stay in precip products. We'll go to total precip accumulation and then drag this all forward in time and see what this particular model is generating. And it brings in some decent rains. This would certainly extinguish the fires north of, say, Eureka, and then really help out those firefighters in the northern part of the Sierra. And this is a long way out model-wise. This really is. The models are just kind of bounce back and forth, but it looks like they're settling into some kind of a solution that as we get to the middle of October, there will be some moisture, at least approaching Central California, but almost guaranteed Washington and Oregon, because some of these totals are 5, 6, 7 inches, and that's appreciable. That will saturate the ground cover and rehydrate what trees and leaves, in some of the bushes and stuff that still have leaves. I mean, they're decidedly going into the process of coloring and dropping their leaves for the season, but then nonetheless, it's better for those plants to pull that off while they remain in a hydrated soil rather than a drought stress like condition. As we move out the rest of the week, we are standing at or above normal temperatures out for 6 to 10 days, and even 8 to 14 days at or above normal throughout the bulk of the country, and then dry. Under high pressure, it's really difficult to get that kind of dry weather going on in there. All right, Friday afternoon, go have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday unless something shows up that's really interesting on Sunday late. But it's Friday, and you should be out playing. It was payday if you still have a job. All right, I'll catch you next Monday with another perspective, and also with weather at 5 o'clock. Another perspective comes up at 6 o'clock. And